If y'all are interested in living in a van, this episode is for you. We have Josh Stewart on, who, if you remember, he is a mountain guide I've had on many times before, but he also works on vans, has also his own van, lived in it a bit this summer. So he's going to be going over the realities of living in one, essential upgrades, and then some unexpected challenges living in a van. And then he's going to kind of get into some of the dang. Sorry. And then he's going to get into how this has influenced his next business venture at the end, which is going to be around affordable housing and minimalism. So here we go. I saw Josh quite a bit this summer, back and forth in the van and all that kind of stuff. And Josh built it out. Josh is doing builds on vans as well. But what I kind of want to know is what's something you were sure you needed before living in a van, but you kind of you barely used it once you got into the thing? Does anything strike at you?
That's an interesting question. Um, my sink. Never really used the sink.
Interesting.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Tell me more.
It's part of the like the little kitchenette thing. It has a sink and built all that out. Figured out like the pump and everything underneath the sink. And then it's got a drain into another container. And so you have just like a battery that pumps out of one 5 gallon jug that's underneath your sink, and then it goes into another 5 gallon jug. And then when that's full, you just bring it outside and dump it. That's like the most primitive way you can do it. But we just never really used it because we don't get our drinking water. We don't want to drink out of plastic. We want to drink out
Right.
of like steel. So we have these stainless steel 1 gallon jugs that we refill every like 4 or 5 days. And then we would drink out of those. And so the sink is just used for like brushing teeth
Cleaning
and maybe
dishes.
rinsing dishes occasionally. Yeah, but we can also do that outside. So,
Interesting. So you're like, dang, we didn't. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought that would have been your answer.
what would you think it would be?
I have no idea because I haven't lived in a
No.
van, I guess. But
Yeah.
I would think that a sink would be like, yeah, we kind of needed a sink. But you're totally right. If you're not using it for drinking water, kind of what is the purpose of using it? And then, typically you're living in a van and it's usually in nice weather. So you're
Mm-hmm.
usually outside quite a bit. So that does make
Mm-hmm.
sense. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Okay. So you brought the van up to Colorado and got rained on the entire time, pretty much,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
more or less. What surprised you about living in a van once that honeymoon period passed with it, where it was brand new, it's exciting, stuff like that? Good or bad, or good and bad. What
Mm-hmm.
surprised you about it?
Well, I think everybody goes into building a van thinking that, well, you can stand up inside of it. You can change your clothes pretty easily. You have a spot for everything. You can sleep, and all this stuff is going to make life so much easier. Um, but the reality is that it doesn't let you off the hook for being disorganized at all.
Mm,
Like you still have to have a home for every single thing, and it has to go exactly back every single time you use it. There's no amount of like, oh, I'm gonna put it on the bed and put it away later. Like, no, it has to go back in the spot every single time. And especially when you have more than one person living in it at a time, that's the only way you'll stay organized. And I still haven't figured that out. It's probably gonna
yeah.
take me a while. Was talking to my friend Jesse, and I think he actually said that it took him 10 years to get to the point where he was always routinely putting things back exactly where they go every single time.
Really?
Yeah, it took him that long to make it really smooth.
So why do you think it would take that long to be organized? Because just for me, as an outsider that's never lived in a van, I'd be like, oh, you
Hmm.
just put this here, and you do that there, but there's got to be something to it that I'm missing.
Well, yeah, it's just because in order to make that happen, you have to behave in a robotic manner, and humans are not robots. Simple as that.
Nice. Right.
We are not. We are absolutely not robots, and that is robotic behavior, and it's just hard to force that. Takes a
Well,
long time.
and you were also living in a van with another person and a baby.
Yeah, yeah.
So I would imagine it would be a little bit easier if it was just you at some points too.
Well, I mean, yeah, and I did live in it for a month when
Hmm.
it was, or maybe even a month and a half when it was just me.
Oh, okay. And
Mhm.
still having kind of the same thing.
No, it was a lot easier to
Oh,
do it, but I didn't. I also was a lot more primitive. The first iteration of my build it was just really affordable. There was nothing in it but like a bed platform and a little table. So I could have like a hot water heater and stuff like that. And so I went up to Canada and I was there by myself for a month. And
Oh,
then I was in the Cascades for another 2 weeks.
I didn't know this. What?
Yeah. Yeah. That was not last summer, but the summer before.
Okay, rad. Okay, maybe I didn't know that. Yeah.
Hmm.
Wow. Okay. What was that like, man? Living on the road. Living on the road by yourself. What was
Oh,
it
that was the
like?
best. That was the best, dude. That was the best. Yeah. Like there's no discussion with anybody else over where you're gonna go or where you're gonna sleep.
Yeah.
There's no like bumping into people as you're moving around the van. You just kind of just drive until something inspires you, and then you just pull off the side of the
Ooh,
road.
I
And if you
like
want to hang
that.
5 minutes, then you do that. If you want to stay for 2 days, then you do that. It's just, and then if the weather's crappy, you just go somewhere else, and there's no fuss. It's just more fluid. You just ebb and flow with whatever's happening in front of you, and it's a lot easier just to be present.
Kind of just giving, or you're taking whatever the outdoors is giving you at the
Hmm.
time, and
Hmm.
just kind of basing your decision off of that type of thing.
Hmm. Hmm.
Now, you're very talented with building stuff, and I know you put in like the one of the things that I saw you do was put in a window in the
Hmm.
van and all this type of stuff, right? What ended up being the biggest comfort upgrade that you have done to your van? Because you basically built out the whole thing for the least amount of money, though. So, biggest comfort upgrade for the least amount of money.
Um, I would honestly probably, well, maybe it's two things, but I think the biggest thing was be this the sled. I have a giant drawer in the back of my van that's bolted down into it, and it's got two side by side drawers, and that has all of my climbing gear and all of my like hiking gear. So it's extremely well organized. I do not have to move anything to get to it, and I don't have to move anything to put it back. I
Oh,
just
sick.
pull the drawer out, and it comes out of the van, completely out of the van. So there's no leaning over things. There's no crouching. There's no like crawling back underneath the bed. There's none of that stuff. It's just right there. And so that reduces the friction of both getting gear ready to go and also the friction of putting it back. So it makes it a lot easier to put things away, keep it organized. And then I have another one that's just for the hiking gear. So hiking gear on one side, climbing gear on the other side. And then the second thing would be a good bed with a real
Hmm.
mattress.
Interesting.
It's a full size, I think, like almost, maybe not a queen size, but almost a queen size mattress, and it's full length, so I can stretch out all the way. Real like down pillows. So when I sleep in the van, it is literally no different than sleeping at home. The sleep quality, the comfort is the same.
Sure. That's funny. I knew some van lifers. We went climbing once in where I took you at Beehive, and I was saying, "Oh yeah, if you guys want to, sleep in the house or whatever, you can come by, sleep in the house." And
Hmm.
they're like, "Nah, you don't get it. We have our house on wheels,
Yeah.
And I was because I'm thinking, oh, like that bed probably blows.
Yep.
So it's the same thing. What you're saying, you get to a point where this is just like my bed at home.
Yeah, everyone always does that. I think that's something that all van lifers can relate to.
Yeah,
Is people inviting them to go into their house and they're like, there's nothing your bed is going to offer me that I don't have in my driveway,
totally.
But a shower, I'll take you up on the shower anytime,
Ah, the
you know.
shower. Okay, listen up,
Yeah.
audience. That's what you entice the van lifers with.
Yeah. Not all of them. Some van lifers have showers, but most
Yeah,
of
that's
them don't.
true, man. But most of them are dirt bags. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are some problems that were reoccurring when you were living on the road that maybe people don't think of before getting into living into a van?
Okay. Well, I mean, like the first thing is that organizational thing. But I think the the most insightful answer to that question is if you're going to be like water, you're going to have to get water all the time, unless you have like a giant water tank. So like we had to stop at Whole Foods or Walmart or wherever we could get water once every 4 or 5 days
Mm.
just to refill all of our jugs. So you you do have to be kind of tethered to society in a way, but that wasn't even that hard. The hardest part was having electricity. Because if you want to do this affordable, you have to have a refrigerator because you got to cook your own food. And you're not going to be eating top ramen the whole time because that's just not sustainable or healthy. And so if you want to have real food, you got to have a sizable refrigerator. So we figured that out, but the thing would suck a lot of power. The other thing is we were trying to work out of it for 3 days every week. Jacqueline was working out of it, and so we had to have Starlink. So between your refrigerator and Starlink, they both eat a lot of power. And I had my battery plugged into what turned out to be like the cigarette lighter, which was a mistake. It wasn't giving enough power while we were driving. We were getting like 130 watts of power while we were driving, and so that just doesn't power it up fast enough. So in order to fix that, you need to be hooked up to the alternator. So that's something that I still need to do. I need to connect to the alternator, and then I'll get like 800 watts of power. And then the second thing would be solar. So I had these. Well, I didn't get solar at first because we were trying to build it out super quick. But eventually, I ended up getting solar while I was in Colorado. But it was a portable solar panel, and because it was portable, I had to stop, take it out of the back, set it all up, connect all the wires. Or wires are all over the place, and it created so much friction that I didn't want to do it most of the time. And it was just a hassle tripping over wires and plugging in all this stuff. And it was just really, really annoying. So I ended up getting 400 watts of fixed solar power on the roof. And that has been game changer because if you're getting power while you're driving, you're getting power, if you were ever to stop at a gas station or whatever, you're always getting power all the time. And you're getting power as soon as that sun comes up. So like if it was a regular solar panel you're setting up, maybe you would set it up when you were like making coffee in the morning. But with this, as soon as that sun
Always
comes
there.
up, it's getting some power,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So mega game changer having that a lot of solar on the roof and not having to set it up. That's totally changed the game with that. Now I'm gonna have to upgrade that system once I put an air conditioner in the van. I'll have to get a different battery. But for right now, my battery works, and with 400 watts of solar, I can go off grid. I don't need to stop and charge ever.
I love that. That's great. What is it powering? I don't know what. This is a dumb question, but what do you need so much power for? Is it the Starlink and stuff?
So the Starlink and the refrigerator are the two things to eat the most power.
Okay.
And then those are other things. Like I originally got a DC 12-volt refrigerator, but it was way too big. And so I had to go to a smaller one. But my size constraints on it, I wanted to get the largest fridge possible, but without making the van feel too enclosed. And so the only thing that I could find that would do that was, unfortunately, it was an AC fridge. So that's not as efficient as a DC. And so that's what we're running. And so that eats a lot of power. And then the Starlink is also AC, not DC. You need to send it in. There's this company that will actually upgrade your Starlink to a DC 12 volt. And I just haven't had the time or money to spend on doing it. But those two things, those will eventually, I'll figure out a way to do both of them DC. Because refrigerator is kind of interesting because you either have a if you insist on getting a DC refrigerator, you either have a really small one or a really big one. I haven't really found many medium-sized refrigerators that would work. I think I needed it to be like exactly 33 inches wide or something like that. So those constraints made it really, really hard. But once I have the bandwidth to do it, and I've done all the other things, I'll go back and I'll upgrade that system. But for right now, it works the way it is.
No, that's a good. Okay, that's a good answer. Now, when you're doing, because you're working at a company where occasionally they'll send you out to go do different, almost like kind of custom things to different vans and stuff. Is my understanding. What's the most common thing they're asking for you to do to their van?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
do you think it's worth it? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, is that a good upgrade? Whatever
Yeah.
the answer is.
So shout out, that's Overland Mobile Installs is the company I'm doing work for. And I'll get a couple jobs per week from them. And they focus their windows mostly. So you can either do capsules on the side of your van that will on a Sprinter, I think it'll add 11 inches of total space so you can sleep the other direction.
Because
And then,
the window is popping out.
yeah, it's actually adding
Okay.
more space inside your van, and
Yeah.
that's where you put the bed. Um, you're not getting as much space in a ProMaster or a Transit, but in the Sprinter you're getting a lot more space, so it's definitely worth it. We also or windows. So we do some capsules, but mostly it's windows. And yeah, I think of all the things you can do to a van, that's the first thing, and it makes the biggest difference
The
because it goes
windows,
from
yeah.
like yeah, because you go from like living in a dark cave to
Sure.
a nice place. The light just makes a huge difference.
Mhm.
But we do windows, roof racks, ladders, tire carriers, solar panels, running boards, heating systems, air conditioners, all those different types of accessories.
Dude, sick. Okay. You kind of touched on some of the different brand names of vans.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to recommend a van brand that isn't $100,000 to buy,
Uh-huh.
what would you recommend for folks to get?
Well, I don't. None of the vans are going to be $100,000 right out the gate. They're going to be 50 to 70 ish, depending on what features. The biggest add-on expenses if you're buying it new before it's been upgraded to a camper is going to be your all-wheel drive. So if you want all-wheel drive, it's going to be a pretty penny to
Mm,
to extend it. Um, Most people will go like I've noticed a lot of people are doing Fords and ProMasters because the Sprinter is more expensive.
okay.
But I like the Sprinter because its reputation. It's been known to be really, really reliable. Um, Sprinters have been known to go a million miles. They just have the engine is just really solid, proven engine. But the other thing that I like about it that are I haven't driven a Transit, but I've driven a ProMaster. And the thing I like about the Sprinter over the ProMaster is that the ProMaster in the cargo area is lower, but when you transition into the seated area, the floor comes up 6 inches. And so that puts the seat really high. And I don't like that because then your head is close to the top of the windshield, whereas the Sprinter, the floor is just flat all the way to the front. And so the seats are still high, but they're not as high as the ProMaster. And so that puts you lower down the van, and then the windshield is like way above your head. And that's my favorite vehicle. Every vehicle I've ever driven, I like driving that the most, even though it's this giant van, because the windshield is ginormous. I can just see everything. I love that about that.
Bus driver Josh. He's like driving the
Yep.
bus, honk honk, picking people
Mm-hmm.
up. Right?
Not exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So if you, I'm trying to think of a joke. I can't think of one. Frick. Nicotine. Come on, more nicotine. Just kidding. All right. If you are on Marketplace, you're a guy on Marketplace. You're looking at these. There's like all these vans all the time on Marketplace. What are you looking? What are red flags? What are green flags for people that have stuff listed?
If you're looking for a van that's built out or one that's not built out.
I would say built out.
Built out. Um, I would look for a if you can I would look for a professional versus an amateur build out. Be cautious because even an amateur can do a professional build. Absolutely, if they have good craftsmanship. But it's going to be really hard to tell if you're
Right.
looking at it on
Especially if you're,
marketplace.
and that's why I asked the question is because if people are
Uh-huh.
listening, they might be wanting to get into a van. They're probably going to buy it used.
Hmm.
And if they're like me, I'm not going to say the self fulfilling prophecy. Our skills with tools are limited
Hmm. Hmm.
and they just want it turnkey.
Hmm.
And so, yes, I think that's the thing that I would struggle with is looking at it and
Hmm.
saying, "Oh, it looks good to me."
Hmm.
But like you're saying, you actually build vans.
Hmm.
You could go in there and look at it and say, "That's wrong. That's wrong. That's not going to work. That's going to suck. That's okay." You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Yeah. So yeah, like maybe we go down this road of okay, what are the specifics? Yeah, that
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be really hard to tell on Facebook Marketplace if you're looking at pictures because they're going to take the prettiest pictures they possibly can. There's no close-ups, so it's going to be hard to do. But if you find something you're really interested in, definitely go look at it in person and get real up close and personal with it, and look for things like, are things in alignment? Is one panel lining up to another panel? Does it line up, or is it kind of wonky? Where there's a wooden edge, is it cut and then is it eased and is it sanded, or is it just like all jagged and chipped? And the reason I say things like that is because you don't know what's necessarily behind the panel and how the electrical work or plumbing work. You don't know what's been done, but what is on the surface can be an indicator of what's behind it. And so if they didn't take the care to do really nice, aesthetically pleasing craftsmanship on the front, then they probably didn't do it behind what you can't see too. Because if you can't make the thing that people are going to see all the time look beautiful, there's no way that you're doing the stuff behind that no one can see. You're not doing that correctly. So
It's a good point, man.
that's what would stand out to me if I was looking at a van. And if you're not someone who has, because if you're not in the trades, a lot of that stuff you'll never notice. So I just have someone who is in the trades come and take a look at it with you, and they can tell you if this person did a good job.
Yeah. Do they have to be versed in vans?
No,
No. Yeah, just
no,
someone
because it's the same stuff. I mean, it's cutting wood, it's cutting metal, it's all the same building materials as you would have in a house.
Okay.
Um, so, and then I think you want to look at how the systems were done. So, I mean, there's the craftsmanship, but then there's also the systems, and your systems are going to be plumbing and electrical, and you need to make sure that that electrical system is going to be sufficient for what you're trying to do with it. And that's a big mistake that I made up front, is that I was just trying to live in it as fast as possible and as cheap as possible. And I was doing that because I wanted to get out into the van and actually experience it. And then that would tell me what I want to put in it later. Because one thing I noticed when I was looking at everyone else's builds before I bought a van was that everyone else's looked like an apartment, beautiful studio apartment on the inside, and that was great. They all looked great. But their storage options were terrible. Like, you couldn't store very much gear in there. And I wanted it to be more like a garage, so I could actually efficiently store what I needed. And I didn't want any wood in mine because I don't want it to look like an apartment. I want it to look like a vehicle. So I did mine a little bit differently. But in order to know where I want to put things and what the design needs to be for each thing, I wanted to go live in it. So I did that. Like, I put cabinets on both sides of the van for one thing. And then after living in it for a couple months, I was like, no, I'm going to take those out and only have cabinets on one side because it's eliminating this headspace that I would like to have. But on the electrical front, I just went and I bought a giant battery, like an Anchor battery. Like Jackery makes them, Goal Zero makes them, a bunch of different companies make them. So I got one of those, and that powered my cooler. It gave me enough power for lighting, charging my phone, charging a laptop, all those things. It was great. But then I learned that it would struggle to. There's no way it would power the air conditioner. So I haven't gotten an air conditioner yet, but when I do, there's no way it can power it, not even close. So that's $800 that I spent on a battery that I could have put towards a system that could handle the AC. Now the reason I did that is because I didn't know how to get just a regular battery and then add a controller to it and then add an inverter to it and do all this wiring. I didn't know how to do it. And so this battery had all that stuff built in, and all I had to do was literally just plug in a plug. That was it. Right? So I wish I had taken the time to learn how to do that system before I committed to this battery, because then I could have put that $800 towards a better battery that I could scale. I could add capacity to.
Dang. Yeah, there's so many iterations that you go through, but you don't really know until you go.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of what you were saying.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Where did you where do you feel like you overbuilt in the van in your case particular, or overspent?
I haven't. I haven't overbuilt or overspent. I think I've spent on some of the wrong things that I wish I had done differently, like the battery, like I was describing. But
Yeah.
I don't think I've overspent. Um, if I could do it again, maybe I wouldn't have bought the. I brought a bed like so. There's a bunch of different beds out there, and you can go from like $1,500 all the way to $4,000. That's how I was looking at that stuff, and I was like, this is insane. So when I first went out, I built a platform bed out of stuff at Home Depot, and it was made out of metal and composite, so like plastic composite decking on the top. But I couldn't figure out how to make it span because it's got to span almost 6 feet from one side of the van to the other with no support. And I couldn't figure out how to do that with stuff at Home Depot. And so mine had a center brace in the middle, and I didn't want that center brace there. And so I did that for the first month and a half when I was in Canada, and that's one of the first things that I upgraded. And I think I spent like $1,500 on the bed. But most of the beds out there were like $2,500 to $4,000. So I didn't think $1,500 was that big of a deal. But I've since learned that there are these brackets that you can get at IKEA that are for a bed, and they're like $50 or less, and they will span the distance. And you just need to get the bar that goes across and then the mounting bracket that goes on the wall. You can get them both for at IKEA. And then you could use whatever side of decking you want. You can use like wood decking, you can use composite decking, you can use a piece of plywood, whatever you want. And that would be way cheaper. Probably be $500-600 max instead of spending the $1,500 for the actual
I
bed.
love it. Okay. If you had to do everything over again,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have your van right now, it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
What what are the exact steps you would do right now in acquiring that van and then the building steps for
Mm-hmm.
you, knowing what you know now? Because now you've had a couple years of
Mm-hmm.
experience, and like you said, I think it's so interesting that you've had all these iterations in your head of, oh,
Mm-hmm.
dang it, I wish I would have. And this sounds exactly like anybody getting into anything. You buy the, I mean, mountain climbing stuff. I buy these pair of crampons. Oh, god dang it, I should have bought these. You know what I mean? And then as you just keep iterating and stuff like that. So I'm really interested, like, no van. Tell me your exact steps right now. You don't have to get into like specifics of them
Mm-hmm.
or whatever, but like, okay, I'm going to buy the van here. This is the first upgrade I'm going to do it. This is the second, you know what I'm saying? And
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, what
For
would that
sure.
be?
Well, so I would definitely get a Sprinter. Still, I would stick to the Sprinter. I like that it's diesel. I like that I have a bigger windshield. I like the reliability of the Sprinter. I would still get a two-wheel drive instead of a four-wheel drive because I just don't think I'm going to use the four-wheel drive that often.
Okay.
And I talked to my buddy Jesse, who's had a van for like, I don't know, 15, 20 years now. And he guides in his. He's an ice climbing guide in Colorado, so he takes it in the snow, and he didn't think that the four-wheel drive was absolutely necessary. So if he doesn't think it's necessary, I don't think it's necessary. So you just put chains on it if when you do need it, and when you do need it in the snow. But two-wheel drive, I might have gone for a 170 instead of a 144 because then I'd have a little extra length, more space, and then it wouldn't be so limited and tight on space for the refrigerator and the kitchenette. So I'd probably go with the 170. As soon as I got home, I would make sure that you have sticky notes, whatever you got to do, phone reminder, sticky notes, tape it to your forehead, right on your wrist, whatever. Put diesel in the freaking van.
I was gonna ask about this actually. Sticky
Yeah.
notes remind. Josh,
Dude.
Josh calls me one time. I put regular gas in my diesel van.
Dude, I'm gonna give you a second to breathe before I tell that story.
Go ahead. I'm good. I'm good.
Oh, well, so the dealership had no gas. They gave it to me empty. And so I'm like I'm in downtown Seattle driving around trying to find a gas station. And there was, because I first went to Costco, right, to get gas. And then I was driving around and none of the pumps had diesel. So I knew that I needed diesel. But I think I had a bunch of stuff going on in the background right now. So I was distracted. And there's traffic and just, driving around and all that in Seattle. And so I just got distracted enough so that I got to the gas station. It was a Shell station. And I got over, I open up the fuel thing. It has a red cap, right? So I lean over, I grab the red handle, right? I pop it in there. I fill it all the way up with gas. And I put the gas handle back in there and I'm just about to climb in there. And then some sort of alarm bell went off in my brain. And I looked over and I was like, shit. I just put premium in my van. I didn't put diesel in it. And so I'm like, why the hell is the cap not green? Because if it was green, then that would have like made the connection, but it's the red cap. And so, but fortunately, that alarm bell went off before I tried to start it. And that's what saved me. Because then it would have destroyed the engine. It would have cost me probably 20 grand. But it cost me 1,000 to have it towed to a mechanic, and they pumped out all the fuel and cleaned it, and it was fine. So, it could have been worse, but yeah. Make sure, because if you're used to putting regular gasoline in for your entire life,
I mean, how
that's
long
something
have you
you're
been
going to have to
driving?
use to do it.
How long have you been
Yeah,
driving?
exactly.
20 years at least.
Yeah.
You put the same dang thing of gas every single
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. And so to change that when you get a diesel vehicle for the first time, it's going to
yeah.
take some getting used to.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so don't put
Now
yeah.
you can't put a diesel pump into a gasoline car because the hole for the gasoline car is smaller than the diesel, but vice versa, it's not, because the diesel hole for your vehicle is bigger, so you can easily put the gasoline one in there. So you just got to get used to that. I haven't done it since, but yeah, that first time, don't make that mistake.
Oh, I'm glad you recovered from that one. Oh, dude.
So anyways, back to what I would do day one. So I would put a floor in immediately instead of doing it later. It had a floor. It didn't look like it was plywood. The Sprinter has this strange piece of wood in there, and it's got this texture on it, and it's gray, and it doesn't look like wood, but it is wood. And I don't want wood in there because you never spill anything. If any water gets underneath there, it could cause mold and mildew and rot, and I just didn't want any wood in there. So I would have insulated the floor immediately, first thing I would do, and then put in a non-wood floor, probably like LVP, snap together LVP laminate. That would be the first thing I'd do. And then the bed would be the second thing I would do. Because you do that, put the floor and you put a bed, boom, you're sleeping in it now. Right? That gets you sleeping in the van now.
Yep. That gets you at least on the road if that's like what you want to do. Yeah, and you can figure out all the other stuff kind of later, but at least that's you're on the road. Good.
Yeah, so that'll get you sleeping in it ASAP. And then the next thing I would do would probably be the electrical system built in a scalable way that that you can do. You can add anything to it. You can add an air conditioner to it. You can add a heater. You can add a refrigerator. You can do whatever you want. And the only thing that you would have to add to it later is add more capacity. So you get yourself a 100 amp hour battery, but I can scale that up to like a 600 amp hour battery if I want to over time, right? I can keep on adding more batteries to it. But if you do that, you're not going to spend that much money up front, but it'll get you 100 amp hour will get you, that'll run a refrigerator. That'll run, a Starlink. If they are DC, it'll run everything that I have in the van right now. So that would be the third thing. So floor, bed, battery. It's the third thing. The next thing I would do would be I would get the biggest refrigerator that you can tolerate right off the bat. It has to be DC. And I would do a Starlink Mini, not the Starlink regular, because the Starlink Mini is already DC, I think. It runs off a USB-C, and it sucks a lot less power. And unless you're just doing some really high, unless you just need a ton of bandwidth on your internet, the Mini is going to work for most people. And then after that, I would do Windows. The capsules, I would still do that again. I would put the windows there. I'd put windows in the middle. I'm personally not going to put windows on the back just because I have storage on the inside and I have a bunch of storage I want to put on the outside. So storage is a big thing. So I'm not going to put windows in the back. Um, and then everything else can come after that. But I think those are the key things that I would do first.
That was a great segment right there. People got to re-listen to
Cool.
that. That was great. That was great. And not just because you put gas in a diesel van. Although that was interesting. Yeah. Okay, so
Oh, last thing on that. If you use a battery, you want solar. You need to connect the battery to your alternator. So learn how to do all the battery and electricity. Find someone who knows how to do it if you don't know how to, or watch a video. But just like, it's going to seem super overwhelming at first, but just do it. Don't just get a Jackery or a Goal Zero and call it good. Just do it up front. And then learn how to connect it to your alternator. Because if you do that, you'll get 800 watts of power. And when you're driving, you can charge it in just a couple of hours. And then from there, you add your solar, and then only then when you have that baseline. So floor, bed, refrigerator, internet, alternator, solar power, insulation. Gotta have insulation, and then everything else after that.
oh, I love it.
Okay.
That was a great segment. How do you think people get to living in vans in the first place? Do you think it's they want more of a minimal lifestyle? They want housing's unaffordable. They want adventure. What is leading people towards what's intriguing to people about van life, or maybe even yourself too?
Well, I think there's a couple different aspects of it. I don't know anybody who lives in a van just because they can't afford a house. Like, I don't know anybody who, goes to Top Golf and watches the Super Bowl or watches football for their hobbies, and they're not outdoorsy at all. I don't know anybody like that. If you meet anybody like that, let me know, because I think you'd be hard pressed to find somebody who isn't outdoorsy. So I think those definitely go hand in hand. But there's a lot of like adventurers, like mountain guides, hiking content creators like yourself, and a lot of retired people. In Arizona, it's almost all retired people. I think I've had one customer that's not retired, that or close to retirement. That has been one of my customers. Everybody else has been retired or close to retirement. But I think affordability does play into it as one of the primary drivers. I just don't think people are doing it because for that reason alone. There's definitely has to be some sort of outdoorsy component to it. Now, as far as the affordability goes, for mountain guides, mountain guides have to be they have to migrate back and forth. A lot of them are going to spend their summers in the Pacific Northwest because that's where all the money is during the summertime, and they're going to spend the rest of the year in like Colorado or California because that's where the money is for that part of the year. And so they need a place to live, and it's expensive to live in both of those places, and so they're going to live out of their van as they go back and forth. For the retirees, I think that the ability to park the thing anywhere, like, I mean, shoot, I could go to Steamboat and I could park it literally on the street, right across the street from a brewery for free, and no one would know you're there because it's very discreet. It's as discreet as it can be. And that way you're not spending, if you're just going to an RV park, you're spending $40 a night to have a hookup. Um, and if you're staying in a hotel, you're spending, 100, 150 minimum for a hotel. And I think, which is fine, maybe if you only have 2 weeks paid vacation and you go to Hawaii for 2 weeks, it's fine to spend $100 or $150 a night on a hotel. Not that you could find that in Hawaii. Um, but what I'm saying is that if it's a short, finite amount of time, then it's not that big of a deal to spend some money on lodging. But if you want to live in a way or go on a vacation in a way where you can just drive down the road and on a whim, just stop and stay. You're like, oh man, I wasn't planning on staying here, but this is really cool. I'm just going to stay here. It allows you to be more present without having an agenda and just kind of go where the wind blows. and you can't. That is priceless, and I think that's what the van allows you to do is go where the wind blows and stay as long or as little as you want, and go for as long as you want because it's not costing you really any money to do it.
Yeah, it's if you stumble on a really cool place, you want to stay longer and if you have the ability to stay longer, you can do that if you want
Yeah,
to.
exactly.
If you get sick of it, you find out some things about it you don't really like that much, move along. I
Mm-hmm.
think, and I agree, and I think, in theory, I haven't done it. I think it's one of the best ways to figure out where you should live. If you're a type of person where you think I have no idea where I want to live, I want to live somewhere in the, let's say, Western United States. I'm between these 3 states and these 5 cities.
Mm-hmm.
Rip a van in those
Mm-hmm.
things, and now you get a very good taste of what each one of those places is like.
Mm-hmm. I 100% agree, and that's what kind of we've decided as we've been doing it is that's what we're going to do next. The next place we move, we will go to the van. We'll go there in the van, and we'll stay there for a few weeks or a few months just to see what it's like to live in that city. I think a key thing that we've learned as far as like what would dictate where we would actually want to live is, are we able to experience the culture of that city or of that community on foot? I think is the question that I would ask, and I would want to be able to have if I were going to live there. So one of the places we loved was Salida and Buena Vista in Colorado, central Colorado, because you could experience it on foot, just walking around. You could experience what Buena Vista is all about, for example. You couldn't do that in Boulder. It's too big and it's too busy and it's too spread out, and you couldn't do that there. Um, but you could do that in all of those places in central Colorado. You could do that in a place like Mazama or Winthrop, Washington, or Darrington or Leavenworth. Any true mountain town, you could do that in, and that's where we would go next is a mountain town.
Dude, that's cool.
Salt Lake City is the one major city I can think of where you could actually experience Salt Lake City on foot.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So, all of this kind of minimalism and, you know, alternative style of living has ultimately really led you to your next business, which is, I'm going to butcher the name, Halcyon. Halcyon.
You got it right. Yep. Pretty good.
Halcyon, right? All right. How did everything lead to this new business for you?
That is quite the question. A lot has gone into that. So I realized this in 2022 that this was what I wanted to do, and I realized it in a way where I knew that this was what my life's work was going to be, and I felt like I was born to do it. And it started when I was young. I was always interested in building things. I always wanted to be an engineer growing up, and I was really good at putting stuff together. I think by 10, 11 years old, I was building tree houses 30 feet in the air and zip lines going from tree to tree, and just getting in all sorts of trouble pretty early on. And I always recognized early on that I had this kind of rebellious spirit. I thought for whatever reason, yeah, I was supposed to like lead some sort of rebellion. Um, but I didn't know what shape that was going to take. And through my career, I've done a lot of different things. I've spent, 15 to 20 years off and on in the construction industry doing things from flooring to carpentry to remodels and whatever. Uh, I went to school for interior design. That's what my degree is in. I minored in engineering. So I've always been interested in that part of the world. I wanted to go work. My intent was to go work for an architect. I was going to go work under an architect as a drafter. And there's this in architecture, you can get your license through either going to school as an architect, or you can do it through working in the industry for 10 years. So showing that much work history, you can get your license that way. And so that's what I was planning on doing. But I ended up in mortgage because it was 2011 and there was no jobs in the building industry anywhere because that was right after the economic crash in '08, and we hadn't recovered from that yet. So I ended up in mortgage, which was also really beneficial because I understood the finance side of the building industry after that. And then I went to work for a building materials representative, flying all around the country, visiting customers, working with my team. And so that gave me a different perspective. And then I went to go work for a contractor in the flooring industry. I was a sales rep for them and kind of like an executive assistant for the CEO at that company. I would do anything for her. But I would do anything from fleet management to finding a warehouse to adding new segments to helping them go into different markets like different states or different cities. And just anything that that person needed me to do, I would do all that. But towards the last couple of years of when I was working for the building materials company, I got promoted as a regional manager. So all of a sudden, overnight, I was now going to manage other people.
All right, we're good.
Okay, cool. So yeah, as I moved into that other role where I was managing other people, I'm like, shoot, I don't know how to do this. I need to figure it out quick. And so I went on Audible and I listened to all these different books on how to manage people and how to do sales and all these different topics. And the first couple, I think first one was like extreme ownership was the first one I
Jocko
listened to.
Willink.
Yeah, that one. I think it was the first self-help book that I ever listened to. And then the compound effect was another one. And I just got addicted to them. I just started listening to tons of them. And the first couple were like really anxiety inducing. So I was like, man, I was like taking a lot of notes and I was just like writing stuff on my phone and trying to like remember. And I was just like, it caused anxiety because I was like, I don't know how I'm going to remember all this stuff. But then over time, after like years of doing this, I realized that if once you listen to enough of the stuff, you start to recognize patterns. And a couple things happen when you recognize the patterns is like it starts to become how you think. Instead of something you have to write down or remember, it transforms how you think. And you do it automatically because it's transforming you. And I thought that was really cool and really effective. And the anxiety just totally goes away. But the other thing is like once you start to recognize patterns, you're like, wait, this author said this, and then this author said this, and those sound really similar, and those are completely different topics, and those guys don't know each other. And this guy died in like 1987. He's not even around anymore. Then there's this guy over here, and he's here in 2026, and he's saying the same thing as that guy said 40 years ago. Like you start to recognize those patterns, and you're like, oh, okay, that is true. That is absolutely true. I don't just have to like trust this guy on faith. I know because I've seen enough authors talk about the same patterns. I know that this is true. And so that kind of transformed the way I would think. And then I started to recognize how far off and unethical and just not about people and just toxic my work culture was. And then I just started to stop caring. I didn't care about what I was doing anymore. And I started to realize that I could no longer work for a company just because it was giving me a paycheck. I could no longer work for a company just because it was doing something that I went to school for. I could no longer work for a company just because I had experience in it. And I could no longer work for somebody even if I could have all of those things in one job. I needed to care, like really, truly care. And at the building materials thing, at the end of the day, you could have all of those things that I just mentioned, but at the end of the day, it's just a shower. It's not changing the world. It's not changing anybody's life. And then the flooring company after that, at the end of the day, it's tile. It's sticking squares and rectangles to a floor. It just doesn't matter. And so I really started to stop caring. And I don't know why, but one day it just clicked that everything that I had done for my entire life had kind of come to a culmination point of where I could combine everything. I could combine like my passion for building, my experience in building, my different perspectives, because I started to realize that all these different things, like it's not about the skills that you get at this job and that job. It's about the perspective. And so I had all these different perspectives of the same thing. And then if you take the building industry perspective that I had gained over that period of time, and then you combine it with the adventure life, because I started mountain climbing in 2002. And so it's been over 20 years. And one thing I noticed when I started guiding is I'd take people out for 2 or 3, 4 days, and they're hiring guides. So these aren't people that go and do stuff that often, right? It's a treat for them. And they're the happiest, they've probably ever been. And all we have out there is we've got our food's coming from a bag, like a mountain house. Our water is coming from a melted glacier. And our shelter we carried on our back. And so life is really, really simple. But people are the happiest they've ever been. And so that experience has kind of showed me how simple life can be and what we actually need. We don't need all of this stuff. And so that got me thinking, like, what do we really need? And then the van life, kind of doing the van life thing, helped highlight what's really important and how simple it can be and how long you can go with that level of simplicity. So all those things have kind of combined into that. And then my own personal experience of growing up in the Seattle area and having this, because everybody has this transition period where they're like, they're a kid and they're becoming an adult and they're trying to figure out, like, how am I going to make it in the world? Like, how am I going to make money? What's my plan? And I remember growing up distinctly when I entered the workforce, you needed 40 or 50K to be considered like you made it at that time. And then somehow, I got to the point where I was making 6 figures and I still felt like very, very squeezed, like super tight on money. It didn't have the freedom to go do all these things. I felt comfortable, but it was becoming less comfortable really fast, a lot faster than I was increasing my income. And that all hinged on housing. Like, houses are getting so freaking expensive. And so it all kind of came together, and everything I've done has contributed to that perspective, to where there's no bottom rungs of the ladder for housing. They're missing completely. If you're homeless, you're living under a tarp, under the freeway overpass. In order to become not homeless, in Tucson, where I am now, you're talking $300,000. In Washington, you're talking 7 minimum. In Western Washington, 700K minimum. So where are the 50K options? Where are the 100K options? The 150, the 200, the 300, the 400, etc. Where are they? They're not there. And so that's what Halcyon is. Halcyon is establishing and defining the bottom rungs of that ladder for having a place to live, and then building from that. If I can define the bottom rung of the ladder, and let's say it's 50K, a minimum standard for housing for everybody. By the way, in the wealthiest country on the planet, right? We have to be able to find a way to do this. So if I can establish a baseline minimum, then we can build from that. And so what I've defined for that is something that has to be, it can't just be subsidized government housing, right? Because that isn't dignified. It can't just be a roof over your head, because that roof over your head might have mold, mildew, moisture. You might be afraid to go outside at night because you regularly hear gunshots in your neighborhood. That isn't safe. And it needs to be clean too. So the way I'm defining this is it needs to be safe, clean, and dignified, and affordable. If it isn't all 4 of those things, then there's still work to be done on that. So where van life comes into play is living in a van shows you what is absolutely necessary, and that can be applied to housing. You could take a space that is similar size as a van, that has similar utilities as a van, and apply it to a permanent / semi-permanent structure. And so that's what I'm doing with that. The other is principles. There's principles in a van as far as, you remember when we were talking about how you don't need a shower necessarily in a van. You don't necessarily need a sink in a van. Well, that's where you separate it into these two lanes of a van. One lane is sleeping and living, where you just need a bed and you just need a place to hang out and watch a Netflix movie. And for that, you need electricity and you need some heat, but you do not need plumbing. And so that makes it really simple. And so when you're building out a van, you just put a bed in the back. You insulate it, you get solar panel, you get a battery, everything that we talked about when I said we're building out the baseline. That's all you need to do. If you need to go to the bathroom, well, you stop at a gas station, you stop at a trailhead bathroom. You need to get a shower, you pay $5 to run into a laundromat and shower, or you stay at a friend's house to shower, right? So you can break it up into these lanes. And if I were to apply that to housing, I would do a little village of like 20 different units, and each one of those units would have a bed, a place to sit on a couch, some electricity, solar powered, insulated well, heated with propane. So we have solar and propane, those are utilities. It would cost absolute maximum. There's no way it would cost more than $50K. It'd be a little bit bigger than a Sprinter van. And then, so like I said, I got 20 of those. And then there would be like a communal shower bathroom. So you got to walk 100 feet to go to the bathroom or take a shower or whatever. And I think that would dramatically reduce the cost of housing. And the lived experience would be like, you have a normal job, you work at Starbucks or whatever, but your everyday life is as if you're camping all the time.
Yeah.
Which would be incredible. Imagine the communal aspect of that. You live in a campsite. And then everything else is shared. So, not all 20 people need a lawnmower, right? Not all 20 people need a circular saw to build a birdhouse in the backyard. So there's a communal garage where everybody shares the tools. There's a communal garden where everybody can contribute. There's a communal hangout area. And so everything is, the baseline is having a place to sleep and hang out, and then a shared bathroom shower area, and then everything else is shared. And so that's the vision for that.
Yeah, I like the bottom rung analogy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
bottom rung.
That's a cool one. I like that. Yeah. Where can people find out more about this? You got a site?
Yeah, Halcyon Dwellings on Instagram.
Okay.
I'm gonna launch probably some sort of GoFundMe thing to build the proof of concept. Right now I'm trying to decide if I'm going to just launch it like how I described, or if I have to do a hospitality glamp ground franchise. There's a franchise that I'm considering doing, and use that money from the franchise to fund this vision, or if I can just launch the vision right from the get-go. I'm trying to decide. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe a GoFundMe will determine that.
Cool. Awesome, man. What if people want to get some work done on their van? How do they contact you there? If they're around.
The same. They can go through my Halcyon page, or they can go through Mountain Josh 87 is my Instagram handle that I do. That's my primary page.
He also does guiding. I always say this every time I'm with you, but great guide. We've done a lot of adventures together, and I've learned a lot.
Yeah, we have
a lot of stuff from Josh. Yeah, very good teacher, very patient. Even though he's a freaking mountain goat up there, dang. Gannett Peak, this dude, I'm thinking I'm gonna be crushing him because he's been living at sea. He was in Florida at the time. I'm like, oh, dude, this could be cake.
No, it's because I have a 10-month-old that you thought you were gonna be crushing.
That also, yeah. I'm like, nope.
Yeah.
This dude just knows how to move over rocks like a freaking ghost. He's just floating. It's weird. Cool. Awesome.
You have any more van van life questions?
No, I think we're good with that. I think we're gonna keep it shorter for that, and then whatever questions I get off of that, we need to do a round two. Especially, it'll be fun too because you'll go through another summer of van, so there's probably gonna be another, you know what I mean, iterations of things that you're thinking. So awesome, man.
Yeah, one closing note. We were looking up the name Halcyon and the meaning of that. So if you look it up on Google, it says in Wikipedia, denoting a period of time in the past that was idyllic, happy, and peaceful.
Nice.
So the idea behind that was, it's really at a core level. It was almost what drives this mission is almost spiritual. I want personally to be able to feel at peace and calm, and I want to be able to choose to act, to choose to do things, to choose to recreate, to choose to participate in society from a calm and peaceful place, not a panicked survival mode place. And I have been in both extremes in my life, and so I know the difference, and I know how I show up as a friend, as a as a brother, as a son, as a partner. I show up totally different if I'm living in survival mode versus if I'm living at a peaceful state. And I also have the bandwidth to be able to develop myself spiritually, emotionally, intellectually, and be there for my friends and family in a much better way when I'm well rested and I'm at peace. But when I'm in survival mode, all I can do is think about myself and take care of myself. And I see most of the world, particularly in America, is living in survival mode. And when you're in survival mode, I find it impossible to focus on outside of yourself, really to engage in the world around you. And so that is the core of this mission, is to be able and to enable people to live at ease. And once they're able to live at ease, then they're able to better show up in the world around them. So that's what I'm trying to accomplish.
Cup is full. Once their cup is full.
Exactly.
Yeah. Nice. Yep. Josh Stewart, everybody. Go give him a follow. Dude. I got the show notes in the, or I'll put his links in the show notes below. Leave a 5-star on Spotify, guys. Thank you very much. All right. Bang.